Members of City Council, please attend the call meeting of the City Council to be held in the 6th floor conference room, 801 Crawford Street, 5 p.m. Tuesday, May 12, 2015, for the purpose of a public work session. In addition, you may consider a motion to go into closed meeting by order of the mayor. Mr. Cherry?
Here.
Dr. Edmonds?
Here.
Mr. Meeks? Mr. Moody?
Here.
Ms. Simmons?
Here.
Dr. Whitaker? Mayor Wright?
Here. Mr. Manager, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam
Right.
Vice Mayor, members of council. On your agenda tonight will be a first reading for amendments to Chapter 14, which is your floodplain management ordinance. These amendments are recommended by the Planning Commission, and they involve text amendments to the ordinance and changes to the flood insurance rate maps. And as you know, the federal government makes flood insurance available to cities that participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. And so with these changes, we're able to reduce risk and allow property owners to avail themselves of better coverages at lower rates. So I'm going to ask Madam Pittenger if she would review this presentation and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Godfrey. Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. As Mr. Godfrey said, we're going to be talking tonight about the update to the floodplain ordinance and the flood insurance rate maps. The changes are the updates to the firms, flood insurance rate maps firm, the new floodplain regulations, and then in the next few months we'll be coming back with the floodplain management plan that we've been working on with the task force that you appointed back in October. Bottom line is, new flood data means a safer community. Citizens, businesses, developers, regulators, new data. FEMA's been working on updating the maps for several years, and we're down to the point that the maps have been updated, they've been finalized, but the bottom line is that it makes the community safer. That's why we're doing it. The update process, like I said, it takes a while. They started way back in 2011, finding data. After Hurricane Sandy and Katrina, they really determined that the maps were inadequate. They needed better data. So they got together with the Corps of Engineers, they ran new modeling, way better data to really sort of see where the water is going to go. We got our letter of final determination back in February, and we have 6 months to adopt the maps and the new ordinance. And then otherwise we get kicked out of the NFIP, and all the flood insurance policies in the city are canceled, and I'm pretty sure we don't want that to occur.
Yeah, I don't want to.
The ordinance update process sort of follows the concurrent plan. We've already sent it to the state coordinator for a first review, and he's approved it. So we're at this 6-month adoption period right now, and that's why we're here today. Our responsibility is to review the firms. We did that. We did submit one change with Paradise Creek Nature Park to get that into the floodplain so that gives us more credit in the CRS. Conduct outreach. We've done that for the past year. You may remember we had a meeting at Bidewee in July in the middle of a rainstorm. Lots of people came out. We've been sending postcards and brochures and all that kind of stuff, posted on Facebook and Twitter and sending out email blasts to really sort of get the information out, meeting with groups, going to the Rotary, going to the civic leagues, and really getting the information out there. And our last responsibility is to update the ordinance. Again, we have to update an ordinance that meets the requirements of the NFIP, the federal regulations, and is in line with the state model ordinance. So the major changes that you're going to be seeing in the ordinance is sea level rise is the first one. It's the first time sea level rise has been talked about in the ordinance. Mr. Mayor, I know you're aware of this issue. You're on the Climate Change Commission, and Portsmouth has been being affected by this issue. In the next 100 years, they predict it could go up another 4 feet. So sea level rise is something that we're addressing for the very first time. It's a real issue for us in this. We're ground zero for sea level rise in this area. There's a number of factors, but we also have land subsidence where the land is sinking, which makes the relative sea level rise even worse than just the global sea level rise. Sort of a text change. They've removed references to the 100-year flood. That confused people. They determined that people thought that meant once every 100 years, and that's not really what it means. So it's the 1% annual chance flood. It hasn't changed the definition, it's just a text. So we don't talk about 100-year floodplain anymore, we talk about 1% annual chance flood zone. It's the same zone, it's just called something different. And then we have the coastal AL zone and the LMWA. The limit of moderate wave action is a zone that has waves between 1.5 feet tall and 3 feet tall. Beyond that is a V zone, which is 3 feet and above, and V means velocity. It gets more wave action, more energy, so those areas are regulated with higher building standards. Then we have freeboard. We have freeboard in the ordinance now. It's 1.5 feet. We're proposing 3 feet. And freeboard is a margin of safety. You know, the maps are based on modeling. You know, they take all the storms and figure out what they think is going to happen, but it could be a full moon, a high tide, winds from the north for a week. Lots of other things that we don't know about can make it go higher. So the freeboard gives you that margin of safety, gets the properties and the business, the buildings up out of that flood zone. Because the maps also don't include sea level rise. FEMA was prohibited by Congress from even considering sea level rise, so the maps don't include sea level rise. So that freeboard gives you that extra margin of safety. And when you have freeboard, you'll have lower flood insurance rates because, again, you're up out of that area. The 3 feet puts us in line with the other local cities. Hampton, Norfolk, Cosin, York County have just all recently adopted 3 feet. They have very similar hydrology and coastlines to us. Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Newport News, their hydrology is a little bit different, so they've gone with 2 feet. But 3 feet puts us right in the same line with sort of the same, localities around us. And you can see in Hampton and Norfolk, they're actually starting to regulate outside of the special flood hazard area. We thought one bite at a time of the elephant, that maybe that was, we don't want to bite off too much. That's probably where the trends are going nationwide, is to regulate even outside the special flood hazard area. Again, it's to allow for things that you don't know that might happen and get those properties up and elevated out of the flood zone. And people will say that, it costs money to raise houses. Well, sure it does. You put an extra course of block, that's going to cost more. But the bottom line is, and this is from FEMA, this is not something we made up. FEMA, put out this document, and actually they will save money over the course of 10 years in their flood insurance premiums by getting at or above the base flood elevation. And, to a factor of, it's exponential as you get up higher. If you're below the base flood elevation, which a lot of houses are because they're older, you're going to pay a lot more in your flood insurance premiums. If you can get above that level, you can save a lot of money.
Okay.
So the next steps is, once the ordinance is adopted and approved, we will send it back to the state coordinator. He'll look at it again just to make sure we didn't, go crazy and change anything. And then he will send it to FEMA for final approval. And then the new firm, the flood information study that goes along with that, and the floodplain management regulations will go into effect on August 3rd. So with that, are there any questions?
Okay. Ms. Moody.
Thank you, Mayor. I think all of us probably got the same communication, some concerns expressed by the TPA. And I think most of those concern with the non-flood related damage that would put a requirement on the homeowner to raise the house if the value, damage value exceeds, I think, 50% of the home's value. And also, it's a cumulative thing if you put, I guess, improvements over a 10-year period that equal that 50% of the value, then you're required to raise your home to, in our case, that 3 feet of freeboard. And I'm told at least some of our neighboring cities have deleted that particular vision. What option do we have? Because I could see where that's going to be a very costly endeavor.
The definition of substantial damage that we have, other than the cumulative piece, that's an additional regulation that we've added. You would get more points in the CRS by doing that. But the damage about from any cause, that comes from the federal regulations. We have to have that provision in there where it says substantial damage means damage from any cause. That's in the CFR, and that is a requirement of the federal regulations to have that piece in there, whether it's fire, tree falling on it, a car running in it, or whatever. That piece for substantial damage comes from the CFR.
And 50% is the...
And the 50% is from the federal regulations. We're required to adopt that. The cumulative, that's the optional piece. If you're not, we feel that that's a way that we help protect people. If you repeatedly get flooded, or you get flooded and then you get something else, and the house is at 4 feet below the BFE, one of the only ways to get it up and out of the flood zone is by having this cumulative, And a 10-year period is, it's not forever. It's 10 years. All the damage that happened in Isabel, that just all went off the books in 2013, because Isabel was in 2003. So none of that counts anymore. But that piece is optional. If you all don't feel comfortable having that in the cumulative, that can be taken out. We wouldn't recommend that from staff, but that, that gets us additional points, which helps us in our CRS because people get discounts on their flood insurance by us having additional points in the CRS. But the from any cause, that's in the CFR, and that's a requirement.
So that's, we can't do anything about that particular piece.
Right. That comes verbatim from the CFR. That language, which is the Code of Federal Regulations, it says, substantial damage means damage of any origin sustained by a structure whereby the cost of restoring the structure to its before damage condition would equal or exceed 50% of the market value, and market value in our code is defined by the assessed value of the structure before the damage occurred. That is the language from the CFR, verbatim.
So that could be even a fire.
Right, right.
Or a tree falling on your house.
You would hope
whatever.
that a tree falling wouldn't cause 50% damage, but, depending, I guess,
On the size
the
of
house.
the tree.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the house.
And the house, yes. But the from any cause is part of the CFR. That is part of the federal regulations.
That 10-year cumulative thing, I would like to at least look at that because that could be very costly to somebody who cannot afford it because they don't get any reimbursement towards the raising of the house at that point. Is that correct?
Right. Now, if it's a flood event, there's something called ICC, which is increased cost of compliance. And if we have a flood event, they can use that. They get $30,000 as part of their flood insurance policy. They can use $30,000 in addition to what they get for the damage to elevate the house and bring it into compliance with the ordinance. That's what it means, increased cost of compliance. So if you have to raise the house to bring it up into compliance with the new ordinance, there's a $30,000. In fact, there were 7 homes in Portsmouth and West Haven and Waterview area that used that after Isabel and raised up, and Fred actually got them to go a little bit higher, knowing that it's only going higher. And they added, of course, a block and actually went, they paid some of their own money to be able to go up. But they actually, because it was a flood event, were able to use that.
But was that over a 10-year, I'm talking about the provision over a 10-year period?
Right, but they did that voluntarily through the ICC. They had damage, they got a flood insurance payout from FEMA through their flood insurance, but they applied for this ICC fund, which is additional funding, and actually elevated the structures in addition to repairing them.
So over a 10-year period, if you get a little bit damaged each year,
Right.
There's still money to raise your house.
Right, right. For if you have flood insurance and if it's a flood event.
I'm confused.
How can we unconfuse you?
All right, Meg, that's not good. The vice mayor's confused.
We do not want the vice mayor to be confused.
Your presentation was great. But the TBA letter really makes it sound like we're doing something punitive to our citizens that is not required and not done by our neighbors, particularly to our lowest income residents.
And again, I don't know what's in the ordinance in other cities. The cumulative piece is something additional. I wouldn't call it punitive because, again, it protects them. If you can raise your house, if you can put in flood vents, if you can comply with the ordinance, it's going to protect the house. Because if you get a flood event, even if you get the insurance, you're going to be out of your house. You're going to have to replace your carpet. You're going to have to place your sofa. You're going to be inconvenienced. And you have to go through all that. Our goal is to get people to not go through all those because it takes you a while to recover, right? Just because you get it paid for doesn't make it good. Just because your car got flooded, if your insurance paid for it, you'd still be annoyed, right? You want to make that not happen. That's why we, try to do the things to get people to not get damaged so that they don't have to go through that recovery piece. Because the recovery, while they're busy recovering, they're not going to the movies, they're not going to the restaurant, they're doing all these other things because, it's Maslow's hierarchy. They're just in here trying to survive every day. We don't want people to have to go through those things.
But now, TBA's concern is strictly economics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, Mayor, they state that it costs anywhere from $75,000 to $250,000 to raise a house. So,
and that has not occurred in Portsmouth. The ones in Portsmouth were 30 to 65.
average.
The ones that were done. So that level of cost has not occurred. In fact, they had sent me one example where they had quoted some from $37,000 to $76,000 was the highest, and the $76,000 one actually included filling the yard with soil and stuff like that, which they ended up not doing on that property. So it wasn't exactly apples to apples that they were comparing. But again, certainly there's going to be some cost, but the cost savings that you're going to get in the long run and the safety factor, we hope is a better trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, the crux of their letter is to read a paragraph. Unfortunately, if something other than a flood damages the home, there is no grant money out there to help the homeowner who would be out of luck if this ordinance is passed. So if a fire or some other catastrophe occurred, our message to that Portsmouth resident who can't afford to raise his home is, oh well.
And again, the from any cause comes from the CFR.
Well, I mean, if that's a federal regulation.
Yeah, I mean, the cumulative piece is something you can talk about, but the from any, if it just happens today, the house burns down today, completely total loss, it's in a flood zone, it's in the ordinance right now. I mean, it's not something new. It's in the ordinance right now. That's not something we're adding. It's in the ordinance like that now. We tweaked the language a little bit because they changed the language a little bit, but the crux of it, we're not changing. That's not one of the things that's being changed in the ordinance. It's like that right now.
Okay, then I'm
Any other
okay with
questions?
it.
All right, thanks, Meg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Keep it up.
Thank you. This will be on your agenda for first reading tonight and second reading and adoption at the May 26th meeting.
And August 3rd here is the effective date for FEMA to approve the ordinance. August 3rd?
Yes, sir.
To be effective August 3rd.
Okay. Okay, we're good there?
Yes, sir.
All right. Budget, we're all budget out?
We have the ordinances prepared
Ready?
based on your decisions last night, and they're revised.
I saw the numbers,
accordingly.
everything's updated.
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. Anybody, oh, yes, ma'am?
We got a correspondence today from Colonel Crawford that he had been cut out of the budget. Is that part of the marketing cut?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we know how much that is? Is it more than $10,000?
24,000. Oh,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, Dr. Whitaker?
The advice that the attorney gave as far as the vote, is that still your opinion, or are we?
If there's not going to be an increase, which it doesn't appear there's going to be, there does not need to be another public hearing.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, we got a motion for a close.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Move to go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711 to discuss the performance of specific council appointees, board and commission members as permitted under subsection A1, and a discussion of prospective business or industry, or expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry's interest, and expanding its facilities in the community pursuant to 2.2-3711A5.
Second.
Mr. Cherry?
Yes.
Dr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Mason's absent. Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Simmons?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mayor Wright?
Yes.
We are in closed. Thank you.